Sorry, Anne, can you allow us to share a screen? It
Oh my
says
gosh.
disabled.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry about that.
Good thing to get that on
You
the recording, right?
you are good. Yes, yes.
I should have clicked it a second sooner. Hi, everybody. While Anne's doing that, my name is Kristen Seaman. I work for the City of Woodbury, and I'm on the steering committee. So welcome to the November Watershed Partners meeting, roundtable about engagement. I've got a quick little engagement. So I
You
think
should
I'm
be
gonna
set for sharing.
share. Yep, that
Yeah.
looks like it's working. Can you see my Slido screen? Cool. Okay, so you can hit that QR code with your phone. Just got 3 quick questions. So I want to do a little bit retrospective of like 5 to 10 years ago in your role, if you were there or not, like how much on a scale of none, little, some to a lot were you doing engagement? How often did that topic come up? How much were you thinking, how do I engage the public? And I'm just mostly curious to see kind of a comparison, maybe especially from those who've been doing this work for a little bit longer, just to see how we're doing, see how things have changed, if at all. And I barely know how to use this thing. I had to email Emily yesterday to say what was the name of it again. So forgive me if it's a little clumsy, but I see the votes coming in. I don't know how to show the votes. Oh, show results. Okay, we'll wait another second here. 16 votes so far. Cool. See it slowing down. Let's see. I think you can still vote. All right, so some to a lot. That's interesting. 13% said none, 25 said a little. So I'm going to go to the next question. What about now? How much engagement do you do in your job today? Same scale. This is super scientific. 12, 13. I'm waiting for the magic 16 at least. Oh, jump to 17. Cool. Well, let's see those results. I just want to get through this. Okay, so I noticed a big change from maybe middle of the road to definitely a lot. And maybe that's also why you're here, to talk about it or to hear kind of some partner examples. Cool. And then one more hide results question. Just in 5 words or less, what's an engagement flop you've experienced? This is tough because I gave you the 5-word limit, but if you gotta do 6, it's okay. I just don't want anyone writing paragraphs. That's a good one.
Means something
No
that
one
didn't
showed
work?
up.
I see.
What's that, Henry?
I see. Something that didn't work out, you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, just a flop. You tried something, you thought this is gonna work, and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about XYZ, or that didn't go at all. Yep. People left early. That's rude.
Oh. Yeah.
People are still typing. Yeah, so a lot of different variety of what kind of issues we've maybe encountered out there doing engagement. And I think it's fair to say it's always maybe going to happen. I don't think any one of us can be perfect every time, and some things are out of our control. I feel like every time I'm out there, it's like either really terrible weather, unexpected, or you're like, okay, great. Of course, no one showed up, or it's like raining and it's an indoor activity, so everyone shows up. Awesome. With that, I'm going to pass it over to a couple colleagues of mine with the City of Woodbury. How do I stop sharing a screen? I can, oh, there we go. And I'm just going to copy and paste their bios into the chat. But with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle Okada and Shelly Schaefer. Will one of you share your screens for that? Cool.
Everybody see the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, we're Teams
Right,
people in Woodbury, so
there we go.
We can see it.
Okay, very good. Well, I will kick it off. Myself and Shelley Schaefer are on the call today to talk through a specific engagement process and strategies for our Central Park project. So some of you may be familiar with this project. And we're going to go through it, but please at any time jump in. We're happy to talk about the process, the project, whatever might be intriguing or valuable for your time today. With that, just jumping in real quickly about the Central Park. So originally opened in 2002, located in the 8th largest city in the state. Central Park continues to draw multicultural, multi-generational visitors, and its combination of resources and services are quite unique. So we're connected to the Woodbury YMCA, the 5th largest or most active library in the metro and the 6th in the state. As well as we host a suite for our school district 833. They host their English language learning and ECFE services in the facility, so kind of hosted within that. But it also hosts an amphitheater, some community rooms, and an indoor park space. You can sit in the trees and plants and feel like you're outdoor. And this is so lovely, particularly in Minnesota, say in February. So that's just a little bit about the Central Park and the project. It is the cost estimate for the renovations and addition are sitting at $41 million. So just to give you sort of a size and scope of the project as well. Here's a couple of pictures that you'll kind of see some images. So quite different, the entrance to give you sort of the vastness of what we'll be doing to the facility. But really, we want to talk about how we engaged our community members and facility users to get us to this point in the project. So with that, the renovation engagement efforts really began in 2015. So before my time even, we started with a number of council directives, public process, facility partner engagements that kind of set the foundation for refinement throughout the more recent years. So I'm not going to go through this, but I think there were 18 items since 2015 just on council workshop and packets alone, among other specific and designated community engagement opportunities. Unfortunately, this process was halted during COVID, but it picked up again hot and heavy in 2022, getting us where we are. And the project just went out on the bid market this week. So connections to the organization goals. Now, we didn't have the benefit. So Shelley Schaefer on the call here was hired just within the last year as our community engagement manager, coordinator at that time, to really help us with this process. So unfortunately, we didn't benefit from her position, but she came in toward the end of the project and really helped us to make sure that we were looking at those principles, that she was working with some very professional groups and people and helping us to get to the end of this project with the focus on equitable community engagement, following best practices. Well, I think we did good work before that. She really helped us to increase our level of engagement at the end of the project. But goals were definitely create clear, proactive community engagement and communications plan, focus on that equitable engagement, and follow best practices. Identified target audiences. This is something that throughout the duration of the project since 2015, we really wanted to make sure that we were connecting with various groups. So particularly, we host a lot of senior programs in Central Park. Teens utilize the facility quite heavily, both in the common spaces and the library. Because we host an indoor playground within the facility, definitely get a lot of guests from parents of young ones, in the library and our Lookout Ridge, and then general users. And then lastly, something not listed on here, but is our community. So what's not currently hosted or offered, but they may have an interest in how do we shape the facility to meet their current and future needs of someone that may not be currently using Central Park. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to Shelley to talk about some of our more specific strategies.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. So just to kind of go back, I had started with the city last February in 2022. So I came on, and I think it was March or April, we just dug right into Central Park on that set of engagement. And with that, we wanted to be really thoughtful about creating a community engagement plan and communications plan proactively, because as Michelle mentioned earlier, that really is a best practice. Just as an aside, throughout last year, I also was working with a group and an outside consultant on creating a community engagement resource guide. So if you're interested in checking that out, it is used as a guide for our staff on how to conduct equitable community engagement and those best practices. So you can find that on our website at woodburymn.gov. But really, one of those best practices is to create that clear and concise community engagement plan on the front end. So you're thinking through all of the different avenues and thinking through how to reduce barriers to participation with our community, and really wanting to go to where community is, thinking through the translation functions, virtual options, online, etc. So when we were brainstorming various strategies, we left no stone unturned. We wanted to make sure that we were reaching our community in any way possible. So we held public meetings. We did an open house where we had displays, engaging with people, and then Michelle did a presentation. We had pop-up events, and for those that aren't familiar what pop-up events are, that is where we didn't have a set time that we advertised ahead of time, but we went to community. We found a time that worked best for, in our opinion, of when they would be there. We set up the tables, set up the displays, and then we would proactively engage people as they walked by. In our case, we were asking them to fill out the survey. We would have conversations, but those were actually really effective in our engagement strategies. We, put information in our newsletters. We had online and social media options. So our website and then social media. And we made sure to work with our consultants to ensure that there was that translatable option within our surveys. And we used an option called Social Pinpoint, which I know Michelle and I both really appreciated. It showed a map of Central Park, and then users were able to kind of hover over certain areas and give feedback on, hey, I'd really like a little nook here or some more seating here. And others could see those comments and react to them and go back and forth. And for us, it was really helpful, especially for those that are high users and really are familiar and know the area. Then we scheduled workshops or focus groups with our seniors. We used a variety of virtual tools when we talk about, offering online options as well if people can't get to us. We made interested party connections or stakeholders, as you might be more familiar with, one-on-one. And we tagged on to other events, whether it was our Woodbury Community Expo or Woodbury Days. When there are events already happening, we found opportunities, especially if there was already a city table there, to bring our displays to engage community there. And then we also utilized market research as well to see what other cities were doing and what was working really well. And Michelle, I don't know if you have anything to add on the market research, but.
Not only what they're doing that works really well, but as we start to prepare for pricing, furniture, and then how to engage what might be working well for programming or specifics related to the facility, and more specifically, a very targeted market research and survey for the Lookout Ridge. So before it was decided that we would maintain the indoor playground, we did a very concentrated questionnaire. So none of this was scientifically sound, but we feel it was really elaborate and many different connections. So I just think it's important to understand, again, we didn't go to the extreme of, research-based analysis, but a lot of different connections that helped us to continue to affirm direction throughout the various phases of the project.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point. I've worked with experts when they talk about, if you want a scientifically, valid survey go out and pay for that research. And that is different than engagement, where you're truly wanting to hear people's sentiments and opinions and what they have to say. So just a couple examples of our out-of-the-box strategies, and I'll kind of highlight a couple of our pop-up events. And these were really fun to work with Michelle on because, you know, having that parks and recreation background, they're used to doing a lot of fun events, they know their audience. And so as we were brainstorming, one of the first audience members that we were looking at was teens. They are heavy users of the facility. Central Park is attached to our library, so oftentimes they are there after school. And we learned sometimes for hours at a time, up to 4 hours. So they are heavy users of the facility. So we were thinking through how to engage them. You know, they're not going to come necessarily to a focus group and want to sit there and chit chat. But if we did a pop-up event and bring in some tacos, I mean, who doesn't like tacos? So we thought we would label it Tacos with Teens, and we talked with our facilities point person that knew kind of the peak days, the peak times that that they would be there. We set up shop, and sure enough, they came, and we enticed them. Hey, you know, are you interested in giving some feedback for a taco? And the line went out in the foyer for quite a while, and they were engaged and really offered some helpful insight. You know, they were appreciative that we were asking them. They had a lot of comments, and then they got something for their time. So that was a really successful event that we replicated, I think, a couple times. And then another example was we visited our ESL class. So as Michelle had mentioned, we partner with the South Washington County School District that has that utilizes some of our space. So we worked with the teacher to identify, you know, what time are our adult ESL classes going on, and we set up a time. Well, we gave them information ahead of time, and they kind of walked through with their class what the survey was and tried to give them some context. And then they came out, and we engaged in a conversation with them, gave them a short presentation, walked them through how to find their language on the translatable option. Michelle gave them a tour of Lookout Ridge, which is our indoor park that was right adjacent to it. And then we left them with a handout that had a QR code for the survey, so that, you know, some of them preferred to just go home and take it at their leisure. But at least we went to them and let them know that their opinion really mattered, and they were valued because they are users of the space. And to get that unique perspective was really helpful for us. And then lastly, one of the other ideas that we had was the parents with young kids. So we identified a weekday, excuse me, and a weekend morning. So we were really trying to do these pop-up events at various times when our target audience would most likely be there. So in this case, we set up, a couple of our staff came with the small kids tables and had a kids activity. Oftentimes our users would come to, you know, library story time, or to utilize our indoor park, indoor playground. And so we would catch them as they were coming in and say, hey, do you have some time? Do you want to do a kids activity? And while the kids were busy with our staff doing the activity, then the caretakers could take some time to fill out the survey. So it worked really well, where they weren't having to be distracted, but we really valued, again, their insight as users in a different way of the facility. So you can see a couple pictures there. And then one note that I'll mention is just the importance of follow-up. So when we do go out and ask for feedback, we want to make sure that we thank the community for showing up and engaging, that we share the results of the survey so they can see their voice reflected, and that we share the final decisions or projects, what they look like in the areas where there was community influence. And this can be done if they came in a focus group. We can send out direct emails, or we can do it on social media or the website. But either way, just making sure that that's a part of your engagement plan and communications plan on the front end. And you'll find, if you happen to look at our community engagement resource guide now, that we have it laid out where it is identifying first the purpose and level of engagement, identifying those interested parties, creating the engagement activities, creating a communications plan, and then this follow-up is definitely an important part of a successful community engagement plan.
Shelley, I was going to jump in real quickly on some of our pop-ups and our online. We utilized the same tool. And what was nice about that is we had different styles of engagement, but the collection or the repository of the information was the same. And so we didn't, in that particular phase, it was a little bit more broad. And so we were able to synthesize the information much easier because we utilized that same tool where, for example, our last follow-up with Lookout Ridge, we utilized an in-person dotmocracy. So put your dots where you're interested. And we did an online engagement. And really for that purpose, it worked very well. And we were able to synthesize the information fairly easily. But we really, again, Shelley mentioned the social pinpoint. A tool like that allowed us to have those in-person connections and have the online, a very similar experience for the different touch points. Sorry, Shelley, just wanted to jump in with
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm glad you did. I think the next slide is yours.
So lessons learned. We definitely, with each engagement, and I'm sure you in the multiple years of engagement and style, you always learn a little something that you can tweak and get better at. We definitely learned that seniors wanted to be asked for feedback more often and had lots of ideas. So a couple of the times we really tried to frame, and Shelley speaks very well to this, but really framing what their influence is. And that was particularly important to kind of set some ground rules for some of our interactions with the various groups of what we're actually there and seeking feedback on and what direction we can go. If not, and I think we kind of learned this in our first, it went off the rails a little bit, which is good, and interaction is good. It just maybe took a little bit away from the particular project at hand. But what we learned from that is the next time we said, this is what we're here to talk about, and we're also setting up this time to talk about those other things. And it gave us a pointing direction versus just dismissing for that time what they wanted to talk about. So and it is difficult for, in our case, the seniors to learn about senior opportunities and are hoping for more of a dedicated communication effort going forward. We definitely learned that, and we've been able to already implement that. And so having additional connections in the forums and areas that they're interested in.
So on this next slide, we continue on our lessons learned. And one of them is that some interested parties, no matter how much we reach out, just were not interested in engaging, and that's okay. You know, there was a senior center or a senior living facility that's adjacent to us that we thought for sure, you know, they would be interested in partnering with us, and we just never heard. And I think we learned along the way too that some of these other facilities have programming and things like that within their own facility, so maybe that's why they weren't interested. But you know, we didn't take that personally. So another piece that Michelle kind of alluded to as well is we learned we needed to be very narrow in what we were asking them and what they realistically could have influence over. And I can't emphasize this point enough of how important this is, that it is very important on the front end to manage expectations, to put boundaries around what they have, what level of influence over the decision they have. So we have adopted, again, in our community resource guide at this point, or our community engagement resource guide, is the International Association for Public Participation spectrum of public participation. So it goes from inform to empower. And before we go out and do community engagement, we really are looking at that spectrum. They have 5 levels from inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. And we're looking at what level are we asking them to participate? Are we just going there for feedback? Do we already have a decision made? And it's like, what do you think? Or are we truly collectively building something with them? In which case it's a little bit higher. But as much as we can share that information on the front end, so they know what their level of influence is over the decision, and we're not asking broad questions. Hey, what do you think? But what do you think about this or this? You know, when we were meeting with the seniors, we weren't ever going to be able to create their own, like a separate senior center. But we could maybe create a focused senior area, which is, you know, kind of where it evolved too. So as long as we were very transparent on the front end about these are our boundaries and this is where, you know, this is what we're looking for, it helps in the long run. Otherwise, then when you do that follow-up, they're like, hey, I said I wanted a senior center and I don't see that reflected here. So that's just an important piece to be mindful of. And then we learned we needed to be broader to begin with, and then narrow it down for each phase. So by the time we got to Lookout Ridge engagement in August this year, we narrowed it down very specifically. We had an online survey, we put pictures, and we said, okay, of these 3 slides, which one do you like? You know, and so some people did it with their kids and they picked which one they liked, and then they saw that reflected. But if we had opened it up just broader and said, hey, what do you want to see in this park? Then it starts where we could have everything all over, and some of them might not be realistic to be able to implement. So just being mindful of those pieces going into it.
So with that, hopefully we were able to give you a good picture of how we approached some of the engagement. Shelley and I are absolutely, I love to talk about this project, and Shelley is such an expert in the engagement area. We're happy to take questions now, or here certainly is our contact information if you'd like to learn more about our project or process.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Shelley. If anyone has maybe one question while we pass the mic over to Savanta, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, as I said, you can email them.
And I put the community engagement resource guide in the chat, the link there, if you're interested in taking a look.
Okay, great job, ladies. That's awesome.
Thank
Good morning,
you.
everybody. Well, my name is Sovata Om. I'm the youth program manager at the Friends of the Mississippi River. I started 6 months ago in a position. So I'm responsible for 2 programs, which is Stu Ed. It is stewardship education, and also the Environmental Stewardship Institute, which I'm responsible for. In addition to that, I'm also responsible for working with communities. And the main focus of the 2 programs is to focus on a pathway program for young people of color. So the challenge is to recruit not only young people of color, but someone that's interested in going into the green field in the future. So part of my task is to make sure that the program is youth-led. So it's 100% run by young people. And these young folks are the ones that actually running the program. I'm just kind of sit there, make sure that everything that they need in terms of the support of the success of the program is there. So part of that stuff is to create enough of the council that we have. Currently, we have 9 youth council that is responsible from fall to spring. They are the one that's actually communicating, recruiting, and assessing what program needs are in terms of how we want to do like the following summer program. So their job, it's identified by co-presidents. So the 2 people, high school students right now, currently seniors in high school, they are responsible for the overall program success. So they are the co-chair of the program. So we meet bi-weekly on Wednesdays from 6 to 8 o'clock. Then we have a communication director. She's currently a sophomore in high school. So she communicates everything via social media, from Instagram to Facebook to chat and all these things. That's her responsibility. And also we have the event coordinators. We have 2 of those. So their job is to identify the communities that are currently not at the table, is to attempt to reach out to those communities to say, hey, we are doing XYZ next week. Can you join us? For example, one of the successes that we did was a BIPOC tree planting event 3 weeks ago at the Valley Gorge in Minneapolis, and we had 20 people showed up and plant 150 trees. It's one of those things where these are something that youth actually they run the activities, and at the same time, my job is to make sure that like anything we do in terms of the land recognition, on that stuff, I reach out to the indigenous partners to say, hey, we are in the process of doing XYZ program. It's going to be located here. What do you think about that? Is there anything else missing that we're not honoring in terms of, you know, the ancestral land, any things that we need to know to share to the general public? So a lot of these things that I coach young people how to communicate with communities that that are currently not at the table. So the program is really unique because it is totally youth led. And when I had some folks come in to stop at our meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they were shocked that these young folks basically running the program, from running meetings, planting events, ordering food, all these things. And you know, and our group is so diverse right now that we're representing all sorts of communities that are currently not at the table in most organizations. And last summer, we had rooms for 20 people, and we actually had 60 applicants apply for a 6-week environmental youth leadership program. So we have successfully utilized our youth in terms of their outreach skill set. We train them on how to plan it. We train them how to recruit. And we found out that the best way to recruit people is food and music and outdoor spaces. So we met a lot last year at Lake Phelan, and we did a lot of activities. I have a 38 years experience in experiential education and outdoor environmental learning. So we utilize those things to play a lot of games, but using metaphors to connect to the event that they're learning at that moment. So those are kind of things that we sort of tailored intentionally to different learners that's representing in the audience. So it's all experiential education, no textbooks, no reading, no writing. It's all discussions and open forum type of processing. So it's been a real good thing. And right now we are planning on recruiting next summer's outdoor education environmental stewardship institute people. So now we already have listed the folks that didn't get in last year. They are already reached out to my communication director to say, hey, I would like to be, so they're advocating for themselves to be part of the next summer's programming. So we're hoping to maybe expand 20 to 30. And a lot of that stuff, it's the buy-ins from the elders of the community. So I've gone to mosque, I've gone to synagogues, I've gone to churches to talk about the benefits of having their young folks in the community joining our programs. So those has been a blessing where the elders basically blessed us with the idea of recruiting at their places. So once you have that open door policy with these elders, it's easier to get in, especially the Native American organizations. It's easier to propose programming. Now they're all jump in because everything is set. All they need to do is to contact their kids, and we basically even apply some of the scholarships for their kids to actually tap into for their college. So that's what we've been doing at the Friends of the Mississippi River. But at the same time, we are now expanding. We are currently planning on the winter solstice. We're doing outdoor survival, bushcraft, fire starter type of debris hut using indigenous skills out in the bluff in January, even though it's not the winter solstice, but we're going to do that. And also tie in and honor the skill set that the indigenous community has been using for thousands of years. And that's going to be fun. So I'm open for any questions that you may have at this point. Otherwise, we'll wait till the end. I didn't have a presentation, but I thought I would rather share it. It's easier.
I have a question. What is the follow-up when you have all these youth, particularly the ones that are interested in the Outdoor Education Institute summer training? I'm assuming there's a stipend attached to that training.
Yes.
And then once those students have gone through the training, what's the follow-up with them? So it's, it's a summer experience opportunity, and then what happens with them?
Or then once the summer ends, we have the communication director stay in contact with these young folks and also invite them to any activities or events that we have going through. And those are the folks, the graduates are the ones that would be first considered to come back the following fall for the council group. So there's a pathways for us to keep going with them in terms of programming and personal growth. And we also now have a mentorship pathway that I'm working on to recruit college graduates that look like any of participants to be their mentors when they're in college. So for the first 2 years, they have one mentor to follow them for the first 2 years of their college career. Then after that, they have an additional mentor to finish up the junior year and senior year in college.
That's great work. I have a question for you too. I've wanted to get students involved in some of the work we're doing in our neighborhood, but I've been reluctant to. We're working with a grant right now, and I believe the rules are that any children would mean that all adults involved, but we have to do background checks on all of them. And are parents involved with this as well? How do you handle that aspect of it?
Yes, I personally reach out to parents because I have been doing this for almost 40 years now. It's very important to get the parents and the elders to sort of buy in, and also at the same time understanding the benefits of having their children participating in the programming. Those are the things that I do pre-communication with parents. If we get an application from a young person to say, hey, I'm interested in this program, my job is to get that contact information and reach out and introduce myself to the parents. 90% of the time I go to where they're at instead of having them coming in or get on technology like Zoom and stuff. So I make sure that we go out of our way to meet them where they're at, whether it be at the nearest community center or invite them for coffee or something somewhere around their neighborhood. So that's the key thing for them. But once you get that stuff though, it's so easy. Once they hear your organization's name, it's a buy-in. So you get the next 2 or 3 kids signing on. Thanks for the question.
I have a related question. In terms of involving families in the activities portion, like if you were to want to involve families in the outdoor events and experiential education events that you do, how do you navigate parents' work schedules and families, other obligations and transportation and barriers like that families may have?
Yeah, while we provide transportation for them, we via Uber or our car, those are the kind of things we provide for them. But in terms of activities, my communication director had a survey sent out to parents working alongside their students to pick up the perfect time for an event. We usually run events during late afternoon around 3 o'clock. So after school is out in the summertime, so that we can meet at a central area. Lake Failing was the popular one because they live near there. These are kind of things that we actually reach out to parents to see what time is best to run family programming. So we reached out to them prior to setting up our agenda and activity programs.
We have time for one more question if anyone's burning up over there.
I have another question about what you said about visiting various faith and community centers to recruit via elders buy-in and things like that. So setting up those visits, do you have a prior relationship with particular centers that you utilized, or did you just kind of reach out to a bunch of different ones in your area, in your target neighborhood or something like that?
I have almost nearly 40 years of connection with community members, so I just reached out to the one that I know will introduce me to the point of state or the temple, for example. I reached out to the lead person in that community and asked them for an introductions or permission to meet. That's how I usually get into hard places to get in. the mosque, the one on University Avenue was the tough one to get in. But I knew of a person that I used to work with at the Science Museum of Minnesota. He goes to the mosque, so I introduced myself to him, and he in turn introduced myself to the imam, and we got in, and now we had a nice standing relationship with that community.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your work with us. Next up and last is Henry from the East Isles Neighborhood Association. So Henry, you can take it away.
Sure, thank you. Got a deck here. So we just, can you see my screen? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We just moved here 3 years ago to Minnesota, and I felt really lucky to live right by Lake of the Isles. Such a beautiful lake, just amazing. But I went there in the spring with my kayak and just found tons of garbage floating around, and it wasn't really the experience I was looking for. So some quick background, and then I'll get into how organizing the community. So I got busy picking up trash with my kayak, tons of trash, so much trash, and it spreads all over the lake. It was really disappointing. And it's really difficult to collect too, because it's on the islands, it's everywhere. And it's pretty tedious in the water. So I got involved with our neighborhood association, the East Isles Neighborhood Association, and got on the board and worked with Ellen Van Warden, who is our Green Team chair. And then also worked with Sherry, that was the Parks Board coordinator, and became a park steward leader, and started this kind of thing where, hey, Earth Day once a year isn't enough. So the neighborhood had a Earth Day event where they'd have a cleanup, and that was it for the whole year. But clearly the lake needed more than that. So with Ellen's help, we got monthly cleanup started, and we really just started out really bare bones, and then worked up from there. And being a park steward leader is helpful in using these sandwich boards. I can talk more about that later if you want. But I realized that it's like not all this trash could be coming from people just enjoying the lake. That's just impossible. It's too much trash. So with our Parks Board Commissioner Schaefer's help, I got this outfalls map here and found that most of the trash is in this area here. I was like, why is it here and not in the rest of the lake? Well, Hennepin is right here, and all of Hennepin trash goes to this one outfall. And one thing I've been surprised by is interesting learning is I've talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood who are very environmentally aware, and involved 20, 30 years in the neighborhood, and they didn't know that storm drains drain out into the lake. They were surprised by that. It took me a year to figure it out, but so I thought I need to go upstream. So I started walking around the neighborhood, and in the storm drains, I found things like this. It rains, all this stuff collects at the storm drain, cars drive over it, they crush it, it goes through these grates, and it goes down, so our watershed, it goes into the lake. And there are some trash cans around, but they're usually overflowing anyway. So I thought, well, we need to do something about this. I applied for a grant. The first grant I ever applied for was with the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, and we got it. So I was able to do that through our nonprofit neighborhood association. This grant is working initially with Adopt a Drain, and it's for both East Isles and the Wedge neighborhoods. So between our neighborhoods, our storm drains drain out to both the Mississippi River and Lake of the Isles. And we've had a lot of great support from the Wedge, from Noah and Martha and others in making this happen. Our 3 goals are to conduct Adopt a Drain promotion, engagement, and to reduce chloride, which we're just about to do here. And it involves these 2 neighborhoods. So I'll tell you what our results are so far. We've been working on this a few months now. In East Isles, we started out with 16% of our drains adopted, and now we're up to 33.5%. Feeling pretty good about that because I had talked to Lane and he said, wow, I'd be blown away if you could make 25%. So we blew past that and more than doubled it. In Lowry Hill East, or the Wedge neighborhood, it was 15%. It's a much bigger neighborhood. We've got it to 19%. We're going to do this again in the spring and focus more on the Wedge neighborhood. But there's been 112 people that have adopted drains, prior to when we started this and now as a result of doing this. And they've adopted 250 drains total. And that should make a big difference, I think, because, it's not only trash that goes into the lake, there's leaves and other things, and I'll talk about those here in a second. So how did we make this happen? There's a whole bunch of information here on outreach. We used probably common things that other people use, like the neighborhood newsletter. We also use the neighborhood websites. Our city council person, Lisa Goodman, also has a newsletter she sends out. So we included our Adopt a Drain promotion in that, encouraging people to adopt drains. And of course, we use social media too, Facebook and Instagram. Especially the Wedges, a lot of younger people there. And I think Instagram's probably a better way to reach them than email. I started a Friends of Lake of the Isles Facebook page. And feel free to check it out and join it if you want. We've got 171 followers right now. And we also have posted updates on the East Isles Facebook page, the Wedge, and the Parks Board Facebook pages. We've also done paid social media ads with Facebook and Instagram. We've done flyers and door hangers. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we've had lots of events. I'll show you those. And then we've connected with a lot of businesses too. And we've gotten some media opportunities. So I've done interviews for the Hill and Lake Press a couple times, for Southwest Voices, the Wedge Live podcast. I did a couple interviews with them, and Fox 9 TV recently, through the help of Upstream Minnesota, did a piece on me on the news just a few weeks ago. And I've gotten a lot of responses to that. So it's been great having that outreach and people coming back and wondering about what we're doing. These are just a couple examples of our neighborhood newsletter and website. My wife did the graphic design and putting together these ads. And our neighborhood coordinator, Kyler, helped us get stuff posted. It's just about getting the word out there on social media and Instagram and Facebook. Kyler put together some stuff there. And we're basically just trying different platforms, see like, what do people respond to? What engages them? So for both Facebook and Instagram, we actually did paid promotions also. We spent $182 in 13 days. And 10% click through would be great, but that's not typical. Usually it's 0.5%. We started out at 2%, which isn't bad for the beginning of the campaign. So, we're learning, and maybe there's better ways we can do that. One of the first things we did is we designed this flyer, and Barbara designed that such that 2 fit on a page. So it's a nice like 4x6 size. It's easy to hand out. And one thing we didn't do initially is put the QR code, which is really handy there. So that takes you right to Adopt a Drain. We also got some of these door hangers from Adopt a Drain, and we actually put a little sticker on them as well to let people know that we're having a prize drawing. And what I had people do is we just looked at the Adopt a Drain website, and you could see where drains need to be adopted. And let's go to the houses that are right around those areas where drains need to be adopted. And that was how we, kind of figured out where to do that. Apartment buildings make it a little more difficult because you can't just get it to people. And people in apartment buildings may not have a place to store the gear you need to clean up storm drains also. So that's something we still need to figure out. So what we did with the flyers is, we went to National Night Out. I rode my bike around, and others distributed them to the tables that people are setting up. They're all registered for that, and I believe, and also we have I forgot to put it on here, but there's like a huge garage sale that happens in our neighborhood, and they're all registered too. So neighborhood events like that, we put the flyers there at the tables and talk to people about it. At Open Streets, we did the same thing. And then we looked for bulletin boards and shops and the parks and put stuff up there too. So that's some of the ways we got a hold of people. So we also solicited a bunch of businesses. So we talked to 22 businesses. And these businesses here agreed to sponsor our prize drawing. So they've all given us, gift cards, got about $900 in gift cards to give people. And we were just planning last night when we're going to have our prize drawing. So we thought if we can't get people to adopt a drain any other way, we'll bribe them with gift cards. And it seems like it might be working. It's kind of hard to tell what aspect is working, but try lots of different things and see what we can do. I've talked to some of the businesses, like one of the first ones we talked to was Renata, and they'd already adopted their drain. French Meadow cleans up their drain. They hadn't actually adopted it yet. I encouraged them to adopt it. And the parking lots and a lot of businesses are a problem. And just talking to the businesses and getting them to work on that too is great. So we've had a lot of success, I think, with getting more interest now. So there's some photos of this is the Wedge neighborhood cleanup recently. Really good turnouts, lots of people doing good work. People with orange shirts here are part of our safety walk group. So we have a safety walk group that goes on Hennepin, make sure everything's okay, help people in need, dial 911 if necessary. Over the 4 months, we've had 141 volunteers, not unique people, but 141 events. We've collected over 2,000 gallons of debris, and we cleaned out 128 storm drains, in addition to all the storm drains that were adopted. And interest continues to grow. People say they just like getting together and meeting some of their neighbors and doing something useful. So I've been picking up trash too myself ever since we moved here. And my totals, let me see if I move this here, right now is over 1,900 gallons from the lake and over 6,000 gallons total since I've been tracking. And unfortunately, I've picked up 160 syringes too. And they're not from people using syringes on the lake. They come from Hennepin and they wash down the storm drain. Unfortunately, it's terrible. So here's some questions that I occasionally get from people. They say, hey, why are we cleaning leaves out? They're natural. They can go into the lake. That's fine. Well, there is some new research from the University of Minnesota that talks about that. And they basically are saying that stormwater contributes 40% annually to nitrogen and 20% to phosphorus. And nitrogen and phosphorus are nutrients that make your lake look like this. So if you happen to like having a green slimy lake, then the leaves are good. But I think most people would rather be on their stand-up paddle boards in the lake, not looking like that. So I encourage them to clean up the leaves. Leaves all go in yard waste. And again, that's a little harder for people that live in apartments. And by the way, you can just get a sticker and I use these things instead of throwing away bags all the time. But I've just got some cans with stickers on them. So people also ask about trash and recyclables. Of course, you pick up trash like I've done here. This is a typical drain, unfortunately, and near Hennepin. And that goes in the trash can. And then recyclables like this, can go in the trash can. But from what I understand, if they're crushed, they won't go through the system properly. Not 100% sure on that, but that's what I'm told. And I try and encourage people to keep batteries separate. I find a lot of vapes, they're full of batteries too. And syringes, of course, go in a sharps box. So people might ask too, what about clogged drains? Well, 311 is super helpful with that. I've called them about all these drains pictured here. You can even see this one is growing something. So they'll come out and clean those. But there's a lot of things that we haven't done. I think there's untapped potential here. One is schools. You know, as a previous speaker was talking about, we could engage with children. I know some of our neighbors have brought their children with them, and they're very excited about it because they have watershed courses they're learning about. And, you know, I'd like to do a little bit more of that. I'd like to contact businesses too. Like I have a neighbor that works at General Mills. I know they have big volunteer groups that do good things for the community. They certainly engage them. Churches haven't tried that yet. And another big thing is just more street sweeping. I'll show you that in a second here. But there's a couple of requests I'd have for Adopt a Drain as well. Like if people go to Adopt a Drain, it'd be really cool if there was something that said, hey, how did you find out about us? Was it social media? Was it a newsletter? Or was it? And then we'd know what methods we're using that work. And also just encouraging people to adopt multiple drains. One of my neighbors just moved here a few months ago and he adopted 7 drains. And he's like, well, they're all around the same intersection. If I'm out there, I might as well just do them all. You know, that I think that could be super helpful too. And there's other incentives we talked about, like coming up with a creative name for your drain. And then maybe we vote on that and then you can win a prize. And that's something that I think could go viral and that'd make a huge difference. We're using gift cards to incentivize people. You know, just preventing your street from flooding, meeting your neighbors is fun. And I literally did find $25 once when I was out. So maybe people get motivated by that. It's like, I can find some money. So my real question is how can we make it easy to find out about volunteer opportunities? And I have an idea for that. It's not part of this presentation, but happy to talk to people about that in the future if you like. And, you know, I find a lot of people are interested in helping out, but they don't know where to go, like what's happening when, and I don't have the gear. The gear costs like for $20, you can get pretty much everything you need. And through the grant, we can buy a lot of this stuff, and Adopt a Drain has donated stuff. The Parks Board have donated stuff. So that shouldn't be the barrier. It's a very low cost to make this happen. So the U of M also did a study on street sweeping. And this is a really great article here from March just this year. They found that the single biggest thing that can help water quality is increased street sweeping. And that's not too complicated. So, you know, I've been talking to Public Works about additional street sweeping. And it's a little unclear exactly how much street sweeping is being done on Hennepin, but lately I'm told it's weekly. That wasn't apparent at first. But you know, that's one thing to do. There's a lot of people that have contributed to the work we're doing, so I just put a little thank you there. If you want to contact me, I have a Clean Lakes MPLS at Gmail address, and on Facebook it's Friends of Lake of the Isles. And that's all the stuff I have to share.
Thank you. That's all great. What questions does the group have for Henry? Now there's a little bit, some comments going on, sharing the U of M research that you mentioned, that's in the chat now. And then several organizations fund Adopt a Drain K-12 program, and there's a link for that just to share with the group. But questions?
I have a question, Henry. This is Anne. I'm wondering about your plans about the chloride reduction and what kind of lessons you've taken from this, how you're gonna, do you have thoughts on how you're gonna do the outreach for that?
Yeah, we do. So there's a couple ideas. We actually were just discussing it last night. So our plan through the grant is to give out 100 bags of traction grit at Fratelloni's. We're trying to support local businesses with the money we're using. When people come to get their traction grit, we're going to give them pamphlets on low salt, no salt. If we can get some printed information, we'll print it out ourselves and engage with them that way. But the way we're going to contact them is we've got a whole email list of all the people that have been volunteering to clean up the lake, people that have been volunteering to clean up East Isles, the wedge, people that have been on the safety walk, and now people that have adopted storm drains that have gotten a hold of us for the prize drawing. So, with that all together, we've got well over 100 people that are already engaged in our neighborhood. So my thinking was send out an email to them and say, here's a sign up Genius link. Let us know if you'd like to get a free bag of traction grit. And this will be an opportunity in person to kind of thank them for the work they're doing, give them a little more information on, when to use salt, when to use something else, give them some information on the free sand that they can get from the city. And hopefully it continues to grow from there. And we're going to do this again, probably another 100 bags, assuming people want it. And in that case, we certainly would put something in our newsletters like we've already done, and our social media also. I'd be tempted to do some more paid ads if we need to, but I want to see if our free channels kind of work first.
Thanks. And I do want to mention, we do have that information about why people say they've signed up for Adopt a Drain, so I can connect with you later and try to pull that for you too.
Yeah. Okay. Freshwater Society, I've never talked to them, but I would like to know what they're all about. That does sound interesting.
Yeah, I just sent you all the information. I think you should check out the Minnesota Water Steward Training. MWMO would be your sponsoring partner, and I'm going to give you a lot of great background information. A lot of what you've mentioned now that you've been learning is covered in the coursework, and you're already well on the road for being a community leader. It would just give you a community practice to be to be part of. So check us out, please.
Okay. Yeah. I'll reach out. This has been just a puzzle in the past few years of doing this. It's like meeting this person, introducing me to that person. It's like there's a whole web of interesting stuff there, almost too much information. This isn't my day job, by the way. I don't get paid to do this. I'm just a neighbor that is volunteering, but it's keeping me busy for sure.
I think that makes it so amazing, Henry. That's awesome that you've gone through so many rabbit holes that maybe more of us are professionals in this field, and we're like, oh gosh, how do we get people just like you is always the question.
I've found that people are really interested in helping out. They just don't know about, nobody's asked them to do anything. They don't know what opportunities there are. And I have a very specific idea for that, and I want to apply for a grant to help fund it. But I think we could do better that way. I've seen other communities be super successful that way using simple technology. And I'm sure we could do it too.
That's the basis of community engagement right there. Henry, you formed the network. Now it's that connecting it to the systems changes that you're trying to do. So it's you're working it just right. And there's a lot of support in Minnesota. We're a great state for, and particularly in the metro area here for supporting that kind of initiative. So we're happy to hear about this.
I'm just copying some of these links here. Emily, you said organize or should fund the Adopt a Drain K-12 program in the metro. That sounds really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, I would encourage you to check out that website. So it's a training program basically for teachers. So they would receive education, and they would also receive materials for their classrooms to get engaged in Adopt a Drain. So there is a link there that shows the map of where all the funded areas are. So all of the city of Minneapolis, as well as all of the county of Hennepin County, and then also the other places I mentioned as well are funding partners in that program. So that means that teachers wouldn't have to pay anything to be part of the program. And they could just quickly, sign up and get those resources provided to them.
That is great.
Emily, is that restricted to teachers who are actively teaching in a classroom, or would it be available to like outdoor experiential educators, like environmental educators?
That's a super question. I'm going to put a link to the K-12 educator into the chat. So I would recommend you reach out to her to just check in about that. That's Chris Bennett. I think she had presented at one of our previous meetings as well.
And she was on this call and I think had texted me that she was having some phone issues. So for right now, the program is based around classrooms, but I think we can, a lot of the materials are available for free, and we can also work with anyone who has any questions about that. So yeah, absolutely reach out to Chris Bennett about that, and we can work through it.
Sorry, that email you put there is Chris Bennett?
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
I will type her name as well.
Okay, thank you. Great, thank you. Yeah, one thing I was hoping to do, there's another grant I'm trying to apply for this week possibly, is connect with other neighborhood green teams. Start out with the neighborhood associations if there are some, but I don't know if anybody on the call has any recommendations on how to take what we've done in 2 neighborhoods and grow it to other neighborhoods. I'm still feeling pretty new here, and I don't know my way around and people to talk to.
I can just chime in that there have been a few similar efforts. One in Northeast Minneapolis, which was kind of a neighborhood by neighborhood competition for adopted drain and for amount of debris collected. So it was number of drains adopted, amount of debris collected. That Michelle Spangler is a water steward with the MWMO who led that, and with a grant from the MWMO. And then there's also an Anoka County effort that maybe there's somebody on this call that can speak to that a little bit better than I can, but MWMO has supported that a little bit as well. So I'm happy to chat with you more, Henry, if you want, about
Please.
some of the work that we've supported around this stuff, in addition to your project.
Yeah, I mean, if we could chat this week, it'd be great.
Sure.
There's a Hennepin County grant that's due at the end of the week.
Well, that's great. This is perfect timing. Maybe just open it up for greater discussion about both presentations or talks, all 3 talks that we just had. I know Michelle and Shelley had to run because it's a council meeting day, but I could try to fill in from the Woodbury's perspective as much as possible, but just want to open it up to anyone else to have questions, or, as we're piecing this together, I definitely feel a lot of commonalities and themes that I'd like to hear what others are thinking on that. Again, really appreciate the speakers today. I think this has been a good 3 case example of how this work gets done in different venues.
There's just so much information out there in different contexts. I've got a spreadsheet that I'm trying to keep track of all these people and things to do. I don't know if anybody has any insight on that. I mean, maybe you all have your own spreadsheets too, or like really deep contact lists. I don't know. So much info.
I think
not organized enough for a spreadsheet.
I think to Kristen's general comment, I'm looking at all three speakers' presentations, and I just see, and we all know this, but I want to just speak to it. We see the common thread of relationships, and it's we saw, you know, going out and visiting mosques and faith communities, showing up at the times and places that people congregate in their regular life, you know, life experiences, meeting people on the street, supporting local businesses. All that relationship building is what builds that strong connection. And then that helps people who, as Henry has, everyone, and everyone has expressed, people really want to be heard and they want to take action, and oftentimes just don't know how to take that first step. And this is that connecting and talking to someone and hearing that story that inspires another action. And then once people start to act, they're actors and they're looking for the next action, and it just kind of builds that way. So it's good to see this, hear these stories today. I really appreciate it today.
Yeah, I feel very inspired by how many like different tools and tricks that have been used, from Facebook to paid ads to, Henry, you mentioned a sandwich board, to you know, going from one person and saying, do you know other people who might help, and trying to like build that person to person connection. I think, well, I get a little overwhelmed with the level of effort that takes. I think that's like, that is the answer, that there's not a silver bullet. The silver bullet is that it has to be this really thoughtful and kind of broad work in anything we're doing. If we're trying to get people to adopt a drain, if we're trying to inform people about a project that's happening near them, volunteers to do any number of things. I think that's what I'm hearing kind of case by case again and again, is that you have to try all of it and just be happy with, or not happy, you have to live with that some of them's not going to work and some's going to work great.
I agree. This has been really helpful just to hear all of the different ways and contexts and all the different scales. I think it's great to see how work gets done on lots of different scales as well. So I really appreciate all of the presenters. There was a question about the recording. So this is being recorded, and I've been posting recordings on the Watershed Partners YouTube. I will post a link to that. I put it in the chat, but I'll put that out on the listserv as well. So it's always there for people to read, and hopefully I can get the presentations as well so that we can save those and put those out there. But I also don't want to, we still have a few more minutes, so happy to keep things open for more conversation and questions.
I could share with you guys one more thing if you want. That's the way to connect people. If idea, I think I can find it here. Here it is. Do you want to see? It'll just take a second. So we were back in San Francisco not too long ago. I was talking to friends about what I was doing here, and they said, hey, do you know Vincent at Refuse Refuse? I was like, no, who is this guy? So he's built up this amazing group where they've had over 1,600 cleanups, collected 400,000 gallons of trash. I think it's closer to 500,000 now. And with over 10,000 volunteers, it's just incredible. And the way they're doing it is, oh, come on, there we go. One way they're doing it is they have this mobilized platform, which anybody can use. And so here's a map of San Francisco. And what you do is you just click on the platform, kind of like you do with Adopt a Drain, and it'll show you a whole bunch of bubbles here. And you click on this one, and it might show you 7 other bubbles. Click, oh, this one's right near me. Click on that, and it might say, hey, this Saturday at 9:30, there's a cleanup event. Click here to register. You register for it. They know how many people are coming. And they basically made it super easy for people to find events, and they provide all the gear. And they're getting a lot of great stuff done. So I talked to Vincent a few times about this. And it doesn't sound like it's all that tricky to set up, but wow, what a huge difference they're making in San Francisco. Why can't we do this in the Twin Cities or all of Minnesota? I think we could.
Henry, I'm kind of interested in from running some programs that do trash cleanups in those orange bags with the hoops around them, and wondering, are those compostable bags, or do you know anything about their materials that they provide? Because that's always a real negative from my end of providing heavy duty
I usually
plastic bags.
Yeah, I usually use like 5-gallon buckets instead of throwing away the plastic in the bags. I don't like plastic bags either. I'm not sure, but they do have a website that has a lot of great info on, let me see, I'll post it
Materials.
here.
I can look it up. I can look it up. It's just, I just was curious about that, because we're always looking for the best product to steer people towards.
They talk about different types of pickers, different types of bags. I've found it is really helpful to if you're going to use a bag, to have it open so you're not fussing as wind's blowing, you're trying to get it in there. That's why I like buckets. They can sit down without flopping all over the place. But yeah, getting the right gear is a big part of it, I think.
Organization 4Ocean sells beach cleanup bags that are like made of recycled plastic, and they're reusable mesh attached to hoops, so like they stay open. And that's what I just bought, a bunch of those for my cleanup days.
Can you put that in the chat or send it to me or something? I can look it up. Organization for Oceans, is that what it is?
No, it's called 4Ocean. Like I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, the number. I mean, yeah. Okay.
Well, that's all great. With that long silence, maybe I would move to close it up here. Don't forget, December will be in person. Everybody's invited, potluck style. Bring a snack to share, and that's at the Mississippi Water Management Organization. I don't know if somebody has a date close by.
Can you put that in the chat too? So I'm furiously taking notes before this chat disappears.
That is December 13th.
December 13th. Okay.
At 9:30 to 11, is that still a plan?
I think we're even going to start at 9, so we can get as much potluck time as possible.
Yes.
I just had a fun idea. If anybody's got any new pieces of flair that you want to, share with people, maybe bring it to the potluck, since we're going to be in person. Like if you have a cool new tabletop display or a cool flyer or something like that, pieces of flair that you want to share.
Sounds great. Thanks, Angie.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for everyone who made a presentation and shared your good work with this group. I think it's an awesome morning to think and hear and listen to what's been going on. So I appreciate that so much. And
Great.
thanks for everyone for taking their time to pay attention and ask questions and again further our work in this way. Super important.
Have a
Thank
great day,
you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye all.